Animal Crossing is a series that needs no introduction. 2013's New Leaf put the series on the map, and 2020's New Horizons was a viral phenomenon upon release. I've been with the series since Let's Go to the City from 2008, and to say the wait for what eventually became New Horizons was long would be an understatement. In 2015 we did get two spin-offs, Happy Home Designer and Amiibo Festival, 2016 saw a free DLC for New Leaf named Welcome Amiibo, and 2017 was the release of Pocket Camp for mobile devices. The wait for New Horizons was 8 years, and while the content I listed was appreciated, it was nothing super substantial compared to the mainline we would eventually... Jesus Christ. New Horizons was a financial success, there's no denying that, but it burned quickly and ineffectively. If you want a buzz phrase, missed potential or I just wasted 8 years of my life would both be fitting. New Leaf carried the franchise in a fair bit of relevance for years after its launch, but New Horizons doesn't really seem to have that same sort of staying power. And don't worry, that's all on the menu to be covered in the future, but this video isn't about that. Skipping back, 2017 sees Pocket Camp announced and released. The last 3 years of content hadn't been phenomenal, and the fact it was a mobile game had a lot of people ready to dismiss it off the bat as some soulless, shallow cash-in. It wasn't a new mainline game, so it could rightfully go and get lost after the first week. But now that next mainline game has been released, and it wasn't all that up to snuff. In fact, Pocket Camp is still getting updates while New Horizons stopped getting them over a year ago. So I wanted to make this video properly have a critical second look at Pocket Camp now of all times, because the thing people were disregarding it in favour of has passed. Hell, I'd definitely say the Pocket Camp team has added plenty of features in the past half decade, and admittedly in almost better manner than what the New Horizons team are able to manage. And beneath all the controversy of it being a mobile game and its monetization, I do think there's a spark here I think most people dismiss far too easily, and I want to try and shine a light on that. Pocket Camp is meant to bring the spirit of Animal Crossing to your phone, and is the only spin-off in the series to try and capture the full spectrum of the series' gameplay as such. And to cut a very long-winded tale short, it does. It's on a smaller scale than the main game, but it's also kept fresh through an admittedly appreciated set of tricks it has at its disposal. So stick around if you will, because this is one for the ages. This is why Animal Crossing Pocket Camp is actually pretty good, and dare I say, probably going to be remembered way longer than New Horizons ever will be. So what are the basics then? Well, the premise for Pocket Camp is solid. You, assumedly a mayor from a new Leaf town, take over a brand new campsite and have the goal of inviting villagers to come stay, appeasing their requests, and generally decorating the place. The site is split up into multiple smaller areas that you travel around in your trusty caravan. There's the main area, the campsite, where you can invite villagers to come and permanently hang out in an area of your own design. There are also 2 slots for amenities that we'll touch on in a bit, a garden area to the left in which you may plant flowers using seeds you acquire. You can also enter your RV at any given location and decorate the inside of that as well. If you want more space, as is in line with other games, you can pay off loans to expand the interior. Then there are the 4 main areas in which 4 random villagers will appear on rotations of 3 real-world hours. Each cycle, they come with 1 dialogue-based interaction and 3 tasks. Each task requires gathering items to give to the villager, and on completion will award friendship points, whereas the social interaction grants the same reward, albeit with no investment. If enough points are reached with a specific villager, their friendship level will increase. This awards XP to your own play level as well. You gather the items they need from these 4 areas, 1 for bug catching, 1 for river fish, 1 for ocean fish and shells, and another 1 for fruit. This cycle of fulfilling requests will award you with materials that you can then give to Cyrus to craft a variety of different furniture, of which will take real-world time to construct. Crafting certain furniture sets allows you to invite villagers to your core campsite area, where they'll stay permanently and make occasional dialogue and task requests, though these are less frequent than the villagers in active rotation, but grant higher friendship points upon completion to compensate. There's a limit though, because all villagers cap out at level 50, although that takes a while to get there. Each villager is also assigned a type, these being natural, cool, cute, elegant, historical, modern, sporty and civic. Those amenities I mentioned before come in handy, as while the cap is technically 50, it begins much lower and will only increase as you construct a corresponding amenity. These amenities come in the same varieties that villagers do, and come with 3 tiers. As you progress through constructing the 3 tiers, the maximum level for each villager of that corresponding type increases. These amenities are crafted with essence, which comes in the same varieties as listed prior. You get this either as occasional gifts from villagers that you invite to your main campsite, or whenever a villager of that type levels up. The only other thing essence is used in, for now at least, is crafting furniture, although it's never in too high a quantity even when it is. Last but not least are the market and OK Motors areas. You could go buy clothing or furniture from stores in the market, and at OK Motors you can further customize your camper van. Basic stuff. That's the core loop. Harvest materials to appease visiting villagers to make your level go up, and use the resources you get to craft furniture and decorate your camper and campsite. Any bells you get can go towards that, or paying off your camper loan. Do your amenities as a long-term goal to keep the levels rolling in, and you're set. Now, I know I'm yet to mention some things, but that was the state of the game at launch mostly, and arguably the state that most people will remember playing it in. And honestly, I don't get the hate. Even at its most basic level, Pocket Camp has all the hallmarks of a traditional Animal Crossing outing, albeit stripped back and altered for a mobile market. It might be a strange thing to praise, but the fishing is almost one-to-one with the mainline games, and the budge catching is faithful enough to where the general charm is all still there. Saving for things you want, getting hyped around certain events, having favourite villagers, a loan to pay off, and an area to make your own are all staples of the series that are here. There may be no museum, shop upgrades, or roost, but I'd argue there doesn't need to be, because enough of the core aspects are here, faithfully enough, to begin to capture that cozy feeling associated with any of the mainline games. And that goes over into the presentation too. Graphically, it is just a HD New Leaf, which is anything but a detriment because my god does this style look good when it isn't held back by the 3DS. The UI interface is a bit, it gets the job done, but as more features have been added over the years, I have found it to get a bit cluttered. It also doesn't help that it looks like the wide Putin meme when you try to play it on a tablet or a fold phone. Audibly, the game is also pretty alright. You won't be hearing the OST ripped for every YouTube video ever, like the other games. It's definitely one of the more weaker entries in the franchise, but it's still alright. A little lacking in overall variety, and it can definitely get stale if you don't choose to put some of your own music on in the background, but it's good nonetheless. And the thing is, despite the fact so many people played it and dropped it at launch, it's far from being dead. Think back to games that came out in 2017, and chances are that unless they were masterpieces, which admittedly most of the Switch games released that year were, it ain't gonna be getting talked about, or at the very least played as much as it once was. So I did a little researching. Recently they held an event in-game to stargaze, and everyone got 3 chances to hit some QTEs for a maximum of 300 total points per player. This was then added to a global total that then got displayed in-game, and the result was 121 million collected the last time I checked, and that was with 4 hours still remaining. This event ran for a single day, meaning that with some backwards engineering we've got some general daily player numbers. Now, it's important to note that this is not some massive event. It's not an anniversary event, this was literally a single day event that wasn't advertised that much. Anyone playing this was most likely going to play the game anyway, with maybe a little bit of a margin here and there if you want room to haggle. Now, if everyone online played this game all 3 times perfectly, that would throw us with 121 million divided by 300. Which comes out to 403,000 players in a single day. That's the most conservative estimate. There was of course a lower average score, hell some people might have just missed the event prompt or chosen not to play that day, and on top of that I missed the final total and never got to see it given it wasn't displayed after the event ended. So yeah, we can speculate the average was probably closer to 250 for each player, and that a few million stars were captured after I took this screenshot. So with that said, the actual number of people who played Pocket Camp in a single day is probably closing in on over 500,000. Which is, like, insane! Does it mean that the chance of the game being free made people flock to it innately? Arguably, having played Fall Guys and looked at the Steam chart, I'd say that these types of numbers aren't banking on that alone. But being free from mobile market does at the very least give you a potential user base of a few billion people, so I'm sure there's some trickle-down economics there. Is it perhaps because Animal Crossing is a recognisable brand and people will flock to anything with the franchise name on it? Also, no, Amiibo Festival exists, as is the typical discourse around how disappointing New Horizons updates were. So what I'm trying to get at is that maintaining 400 million daily users at minimum is no easy task. You've got to have some good basis for people to keep coming back, and I'd argue with any good mobile game that starts with updates. Add new content big and small and give people that inkling to come back or nudge to keep playing, and they may just will. Anyways, gentlemen, let's speed through 5 or so years of updates. I'd do this in a nice fleshed out section, but I want this video to stay short and come out before the end of the year, and it's currently the 30th at 8 PM. So, without further ado... That garden I mentioned earlier, as well as 4 additional villager types with their associated essences and amenities, were all post-launch content. There's also too many to mention exactly, but there's a lot of limited time furniture that's cycled through the game in the past half-decade with no sign of it stopping soon. Events were all added, being the fishing tourney, scavenger hunts and garden safaris, of which all occur once a month, usually after one after the other, and most likely with some sort of seasonal theme, although these can and do vary. Fishing tourneys spawn in a set amount of special fish every 3 hours, and the total length of your fish caught measures your progress for the event. The more fish you catch, the longer your length is, and the more stuff you can claim. flame. If you want to play fast, you can buy a golden rod, which guarantees every fish you catch is, in fact, a 2-for-1 special. This can happen without it, although it is rare-ish. Scavenger hunts spawn gyroidites around every area of your campgrounds, and you can collect them to craft that event's limited time furniture. There's no set time for when they respawn, but generally checking every 3 hours nets you a solid amount. Golden safaris have you doing your regular tasks to obtain and subsequently plant that event's special flower seeds. In the event, there's 4 variants of a creature to catch, and they spawn when the seeds fully sprout, which takes, as you may have guessed, 3 hours. Catching them isn't always a guarantee, although if you pay a void to do it for you, in which case it is. Hitting milestones for each type of creature gives you that good shit, and you can trade flowers for extra furniture as well. A cabin was also added where you can decorate and invite even more villagers to come and permanently hang out. It started as 1 level, but now it's boasting 3. In a rush, you can just get Pete to do all your tasks for you so long as you have the materials, or from a handy dandy menu, although he won't claim your bonus from each villager for their social interaction. From my own experience, this doesn't oversimplify the game. I still prefer going from spot to spot to speak with villagers and only use them in a cycle when it's about to reset. That seems to be a general agreement from what I've seen online as well, so don't fear, he's helpful but not overly enticing as to kill a game. Villagers can now also give you the option to choose what to give them instead of specifically wanting an apple. Sometimes they leave it open-ended as to what fruit, bug, or fish you give them. It ain't much, but it's good for managing your inventory. Overall, more bugs and fish were added, alongside perfect fruit and a unique fruit type that varied from camp to camp. Giving rarer creatures perfect fruit or another player's unique fruit to a villager is either part of a standard request, or the aforementioned freeform requests will grant more friendship points than normal. You can also add friends, visit their campsites, and help them in a variety of ways. Speaking of campsites, whereas the area you could initially place items was rather a limited rectangle in front of your amenities, this area has since expanded to include most, if not all, of the area previously available in the campsite that just couldn't be decorated. And I think that's rather neat. Market boxes are a thing you can use to sell items to other players, or buy things that you need too. You set your own prices and they set theirs. You can access your friends' boxes 24/7, but you can also access random people's boxes when they just so happen to show up at one of the areas villagers rotate at. A borderline pointless slot machine minigame was added to OK Motors, as was an actual form of gambling in the form of fortune cookies. Each cookie has a unique furniture and limited time run, with items ranging from 3 to 5 stars, with there only being 1 5-star item per cookie and it typically being the most sought after. There are also stamp card loyalty things added to complement this, with each purchase awarding stamps. Get 10 and you get a card. Save enough cards and you can use them to directly buy the items rather than depending on chance. What do you buy these cookies with, you may ask? Well, you can buy them with bells if you're lucky and get a rare spawn in the store, but mainly it's leaf tickets. If you want your life to be easier, get leaf tickets. They may not make the world go round, but they certainly help it to. A mobile game would also be amiss if daily login bonuses weren't present, so it makes sense they are here. Log in and get bells, resources, leaf tickets, throw nets, and honey, you name it, it's probably in there. Daily stretch and event challenges are also present. They typically award the same things as logging in bonuses, although event challenges can award event furniture as well. Have you missed a previous event or cookie? Well, don't worry, as things can be reissued. Cookie reissues typically go for the same price as usual, although furniture reissues usually have a bell markup and require a rare resource to craft, known as reissue material on top of that. Gulliver is here too, give him your items and he'll set off one of these 3 islands available at any current time. Return with a selection of goods from a predetermined pool, of which you can then pick 1 for free and have to play reef tickets for the rest. Some of these are sweets, some of these are maps, and some are just resources. You don't know what you're picking until you've picked it though, so there's no real way to discern it. Don't fear though, as if you visit an island enough times, you'll eventually get the thing you want, as there's a finite amount of things available on each island. But what are these sweets, I hear you ask? Basically, you give them to a villager and they'll like you more. Little print to go ha ha. Get a map from Gulliver instead, you go take it to Blathers. With him you roll dice and advance through them like some sort of board game, though each roll requires a set amount of a certain resource that can vary. Each map can reward bells, leaf tickets, essence, resource, or in the newer case, villagers. So we're clear this skips the requirement of having to craft furniture to invite them to your campsite or cabin, and any villager unlocked via this is immediately available to visit from the outset. Once you level villagers enough, they'll request a special piece of furniture to craft, of which can only be unlocked via said request. Once you do craft it, they'll give you a few items and level up a bit. There's also a photo and AR mode. The Quarry is a place you can gain access to by either getting help from friends or by buying your way in with leaf tickets. Its rewards rotate between all sorts of general resources, and how much each visit rewards depends essentially on RNG. The more valuable your haul that you get from breaking rocks, the more of the current resource you're given. There's also a scrapbook that outlines all of the currently ongoing events that you can decorate with stickers, and last but not least, there's a Happy Home Academy minigame in which you craft a list of furniture items and use it to fill in the missing spaces in a pre-decorated room. Using all the listed furniture awards full marks and medals, although you can subsidise in other furniture you may have on hand for lower marks. However, if the devs theme it thematically on point, it'll still give you a nice enough point bonus. Each stage can also award up to 3 emblems, of which are then used on their own sort of leveling system that awards a whole variety of goodies. And breathe. I think that's everything. Needless to say, during its 5-year run, Pocket Camp has changed a fair bit since its inception. To the wholly new things like the cabin and the treasure track, to the smaller things just like giving you more space to experiment and get creative. If you gave the game to someone who only played it when it first came out, it'd be hard to make a case that nowadays it's in any worse a state than it was back then. There simply is more to do, so much to the point that arguably each cycle is getting closer and closer to double that of when the game first released, if you want to be on top of things, that is. And that admittedly is kinda cool, because that all grows off the really good foundation it started with. The game has no energy bar, no sort of restriction on when you can and can't play to make progress. You can always tinker with designs, use request tickets for extra requests, snoop on other people's attempts to take notes, or my personal favourite, just burn time stacking up on bugs and fish. And that's the thing, if you want to play Pocket Camp beyond what a normal cycle would offer, you can. In fact, some of my fondest memories come from waking up in the early hours of the morning, doing my cycle and not being able to get back to sleep. Or finishing at a club I used to go to and having to wait ages for the next bus, because it was winter. And I just find myself out of things to do in the game and just fish. If I was feeling lucky, I'd rearrange my cabin. And the game is always subtly pushing you back towards those things. There is an inventory limit, meaning you hit a hard cap with what you can and can't carry, and if you're unlucky, that creates a bit of a deficit. If it's fruit, it sucks, because that's on a timer unless you've got some fertilizer. But if it's some sort of bug or fish, you can go to work and try and get some. Stop to smell the roses, you know? I'd be amiss to not mention the balloons, which are a little bit of a lifeline. They give you an injection of resources every so often, so, as I said, if you're in a rush, you at least have something going and you don't need to grind forever. But if you really want to get into Pocket Camp to the point you're doing multiple cycles in a day, eventually those guys will run dry and you're back to fishing eventually. And it's important to note that because that's where Pocket Camp truly shines, and arguably the reason I have more hours on it than New Horizons. It's all a very bite-sized version of an Animal Crossing game, mobile elements mixed in, yes, but when you scratch it all away, this game is still Animal Crossing, and all the wonderful moments that stem from all the small things in the series can happen just the same here. Every Animal Crossing game relies heavily on one thing: intrinsic motivation. If you're unfamiliar with the phrase, it's basically that voice in the back of your head that gets you want to do things because you find them personally rewarding. That can be speaking and gifting items to your villagers to unlock their photo in New Horizons, saving countless months for a specific Gracie furniture set in City Folk, or trying to get every KK song imaginable. The game isn't telling you to do those things, as there's no active reminder that they're there. You seek out those things and make steps towards them because you deem them important to yourself. On the opposite side of the coin, and arguably less present, barring New Horizons, is extrinsic motivation. These are factors that make you want to do a task for some sort of reward, end goal, or that you're tempted and pushed into doing them more than anything else. Think paying off your home loan, the tutorial week from New Horizons, or getting your approval rating up in New Leaf. Now correlate that to Pocket Camp and you find something interesting. Out of every Animal Crossing entry, it has the biggest focus on extrinsic motivation. Say whereas in every other game that motivation was your loan, given it had an endpoint, then in City Folk it was extended via the town fund, and New Leaf has it you filling out Main Street, they all end. Eventually you hit a cap, and if you don't have much more intrinsic motivation to keep going, you stop because you've simply got enough. Pocket Camp, plain and simple, has a level system, and its current cap is dictated by how many villagers are currently in the game, of which there's almost a constant cycle of old and original being added. And on top of that, there's a loan to expand your camper, all the amenities to craft to make sure you can max out each animal's level, the somewhat FOMO nature of missing out on a cycle, and the monthly events, although we'll get to those in due time. And a lot of those goals end is the thing. The only constant thing is a stream of villagers and an ever-increasing level cap. But there's still a constant extrinsic motivation for someone to keep playing the game, so long as there's a number to make go higher. People will bite your line. And I mean, that makes sense for a mobile game, because of course they want people to keep playing to sell more Leaf tickets. But Animal Crossing is a franchise based off of intrinsic motivation, so what did they do to keep that draw? They expanded. No, they quadrupled down on the space that you had to experiment with your designs in. Of course, you can go fish or bug hunt anytime just to vibe, but the real kicker is the limited time events. Because technically, there are goals for each of those events that the games draw your attention to nonetheless. They should be classed as extrinsic, but I wouldn't say that they are for one main reason. It's the rewards. There is Leaf tickets and other general stuff in there on occasion, but the main draw is the furniture and the clothing. If you don't like that furniture, you don't have to do it to progress. That stuff is nice, but it's your shard if you're interested enough to plant 100+ flowers in a week to go get it. But the game also pulls your arm with the month-long events that tie them all together, which is kind of like a leveling system. You could have a whole discussion over what these events would be classed as in the comments, but personally I kind of think they're a really good blend of the two. You want leaf tickets and the furniture for your own personally set goals? Sure thing. You want the furniture to give to Gulliver or to use in the limited time event on the Happy Home Academy game for some free emblems? Or just the other resources to further your rank? Go right ahead. And that's right, the Happy Home Academy game mode technically would fall under this weird middle ground as well. You've got your two sides and then some weird blend in the middle. Mind this is a mobile game, but goddamn that's some good design if I've ever seen it. Of course, certain people prefer structure over freedom and vice versa, but by designing an Animal Crossing game with that little bit more structure, you kind of draw in everyone so long as they're interested. There's a reason I have so many more hours in Pocket Camp after all. It's because I like having that bit more structure. If you've watched my City Folk series, from the beginning we always had that end destination where we pay off our house and town fund, and that'd be it. I like having an extrinsic through line in the game, because unless the game is really good, I tend to drop it once I'm out of things the game kind of tells me to do. And for all intents and purposes, Animal Crossing is that good. It's why we've moved the goalposts twice in the City Folk series, so I could pursue some more personal goals before it ended. But to have that crutch constantly there and so much more solid in Pocket Camp, it makes whatever operating system I happen to have booted on my brain to go, yes please, more of this. And I think that's why Pocket Camp has stuck around for so long, because it had more of that crutch that appeals to that type of fan. This is an Animal Crossing game that never really ends. Not only that, but because a lot of people are that blend in the middle as to what they like. It isn't as clear-cut as enjoys extrinsic or intrinsic, it's generally a balance. And so to see a game where the whole spectrum is catered for, it's criminal how well Pocket Camp is designed. So to answer the question I had previously, what keeps people coming back to Pocket Camp? It's the event system. Big updates to the game are always great and appreciated, but they're always few and far between. The current system of modelling a few items each month and hosting an event works just fine to always insert some new life into the game. And while, yes, that does mean more meaningful updates to the game are less prioritised, I'd argue it's better to pace them the way they have been. The game doesn't need a brand new feature to tie people into coming back, it's fine as is. And I understand that that's just mobile game policy in general. Add a stream of new content in the hope it keeps current players occupied, and potentially reels in old and new ones. But I'd argue Pocket Camp is different from the crowd in one main aspect, and that stems from the brand it tied itself to. The way I see it, Nintendo had two avenues to take while developing Pocket Camp. They could either try and faithfully capture the essence of a mainline game and tweak it just enough to appeal to a mobile market, or create a fully new mobile game that could vaguely call itself Animal Crossing. And personally I think they went for the former. Because everything is here, barring in-depth conversations, although if we factor in New Horizons we're technically on the same page as that. But it has the essence of a mainline game. Cut down, but it's here nonetheless. It's general addictive mobile game shenanigans and some Nintendo genius that pulled this together, and I have to commend them on arguably striking the best balance they could have. And underneath all that at a basic level, that initial 1.0 version of the game was also quality. What's the point in enticing people to come back if the core of the game itself is dull and boring? Better yet, when it comes to enticing people back, I don't think enough people talk about this. But unlike mainline titles, you aren't punished from taking a break. No progress regresses, there are no weeds and nobody can move away. The only thing you miss out on is limited events, to which there'll always inevitably be a reissue. The game is always poised to allow you to come back at any time, without any of the barriers you might encounter with a mainline game. And while for mobile games that might be rather common, I still think it's a smart trick to make sure one of the biggest obstacles people face when coming back to their old Animal Crossing saves is entirely eradicated for its mobile outing. But there's going to be a hold-up somewhere. I can't argue Pocket Camp is as good as I say it is without addressing the elephant in the room, because a lot of people see the leaf ticket system and the stuff that ties into it to be greedy and definitive proof that this game is just a soulless cash-in. First and foremost, this game needs a monetization model, and you at least need to be incentivized to spend money so that they can keep the lights on in the dev studio. That's why I'm actually fine with some of the game's more mobile features. For what it's worth, I will take incentivizing me to spend premium currency over adverts any day of the week. And the thing is, the premium currency is not that bad. They do always make sure to give some, not a lot, but at least some leaf tickets in the daily login rewards, and you do get them from leveling up. And the amount of tickets you'll feasibly be using in-game, or at the very least the few things you'd want them to spend on, I think it's at least fair enough. I know during the direct for the game everyone kind of let out a collective sigh when they saw Image of the Century over here, but having seriously played the game and spent at most £5, it's nowhere near as pay-to-win or greedy as the internet would lead you to believe. There have been times where I felt that little tug to shill, but personally I think that's healthy for the game to have from time to time. even on the people who intend to spend very little overall. As far as premium currency integration goes, Pocket Camp is nowhere near invasive with it. There are also subscription models for Pocket Camp. Again, you could feel the collective eye roll when these were announced, but for what it's worth, you're even less incentivized to spend money on these given they're reserved for only the people who practically have this game as their lifeblood. Extra storage space, access to stickers, free cookies, monthly leave tickets, and an assistant that follows you around and gathers you extra resources while you're offline? Most of that is reasonably priced, and I'd argue that the most essential one, that being the helper plan, is really well priced. £3 for a boost in your productivity for the exact duration of a limited time event. Like, if you only need it in a month, you only need it for a month. And considering how by the balls the game can get you at times, FUT is essentially a get out of jail free card if you fall behind an event or just don't have as much time as you would hope to have. It is a steal. Side note, £8 a month for the 5 free cookies, warehouses, and savable furniture layouts plan sounds ludicrous, but on second assessment, every leaf ticket equivalent for the cookies alone in that plan is about that much. And on top of that, you also have access to every cookie ever released, so I suppose it's fine if you care about that. It ain't for me. It's pushing the envelope, but like, I can let it slide. It may just be me, but I don't think the game is ever too invasive with purchases. You could argue that because I've played the game for 5 years, I'm just adjusted to it and rich now, but on the contrary, no! Again, it feels like people heard the game was for mobile, saw the microtransactions, and immediately dismissed it because the game dared to have a monetization model, and was by default then greedy. Like, you're telling me you were gonna play the game and say it was the best time ever if you actually had to pay for it, or wouldn't at the very least be frustrated at ads instead? You can't win, but for what it's worth of these types of games, this is certainly the most player-friendly way to go. To be frank, the mileage you'll get out of Pocket Camp will vary on how much of a mobile gamer you are. I know a lot of people put off from mobile games, as to be frank, they're mostly designed to be this quick fix mush to hit you with just enough dopamine to keep you around until the next ad plays. But hopefully throughout the course of this video, I've hopefully been able to shine a light on why I think this mobile outing is a lot more qualitative than you'll find in many other experiences. It has a monetization model that isn't too invasive, it has all the hallmarks of the main series it lends from, and isn't a soulless cash grab, and the presentation is absolutely spot on. We're coming up on the 3rd anniversary of New Horizons this next year, and it's all but clear the game is dead in the water. And Nintendo has no real reason to care. They took your £60 in payment for Happy Home Paradise already, updated the game on the world's worst schedule, just enough to call it complete, and since dipped. For all of you that have been watching the Let's Play series on the other channel, once that series comes to an end, I don't think I'll be revisiting New Horizons, because to be frank, the amount of missed potential in that game has me in no desire to revisit it anytime soon. On the contrary, Pocket Camp is different. I'm not a mobile game, but I think I will keep coming back. Its developers have a symbiotic relationship with the player base, and dare I say respect them to a degree. Content updates need to keep coming, so the money keeps coming too. And they haven't taken the piss yet. In a world where every mobile game has the most obnoxious, focus group research adverts in existence with the same burn quickly and brightly attitude towards gameplay that New Horizons exhibited, I can't help but respect the Pocket Camp devs, because they've cultivated a quality product in a landscape where most other experiences may be free at the cost of quality or some really underhanded monetization tactics. And something about that is really funny to me. That the Animal Crossing game, just before New Horizons, that was deemed to be the soulless thing no one would want to play, that the devs would purely be in it for the money, and that it would practically be irrelevant and abandoned in a few years, wasn't that. And that, in fact, this quality game that people were waiting for, anticipating it was a home console release that cost a bunch of money to get, was soulless and poorly updated and, admittedly, due to be forgotten about within a few years of its release. I think it is so hilariously funny that this hasn't been talked about, but essentially these two were the complete inverse of each other. And that's something I think should genuinely be talked about, because it is quite frankly hilarious. And with all that said, if you ever do find yourself having an Animal Crossing itch anytime soon, why not give Pocket Camp a go? Hell, go resume that save you probably only put a few hours into all those years ago. It's also there if you linked a Nintendo account. I mean, what's the harm in trying? It's free after all. Happy late 5th anniversary, Pocket Camp. Personally, I'm really glad to have seen you succeed this far, and I can't wait to see what you and the team have in store for the next 5 years. And outro time. I haven't done one of these on the channel as of yet, but this one's kind of important, I promise. First and foremost, here are your playlists. Second of all, yes, I'm aware I said a bunch of stuff in this video which alluded to it coming out towards the end of the year. Don't want to get too much into it, but basically I was rushing to get it done in the last few days of the year, and in which people called in sick to work, which meant I had to work and had way less time to work on this video, and it kind of snowballed / got procrastinated from there. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. Of course, a like and a comment and subscribe would all be great. Let's get a conversation going down in the comments. What are your thoughts on Pocket Camp? I'm genuinely interested, and I mean, hey, let's get a friend code exchange going on down there, because why not? So, with all that said and all that aside, thanks for watching, guys. My name's been Rabbit and Peace, out.